So four-stroke skidoos are notoriously hard starters, mainly to do with the fact that the four-stroke engine, of course, has oil bath in the bottom of the engine, and that gets very thick at cold temperatures. So I've had this thing out in like minus 35, minus 37 on ice fishing expeditions, and it wouldn't even turn over. It was just a frozen turd. So the only thing you can do about that is, keep it in a warm shack or shop. And if you don't have that option, what you have to do then is use something like an inline coolant heater, which we're going to install today. So this is the coolant heater that the local Yamaha shop recommended. It's about $60 Canadian, which is quite a bit, but at least we know it's going to fit properly. So you got the heater body itself, which basically just has an element around the flow passageway here, and your block heater cable, and a couple replacement pipe clamps, and some instructions. So where we're going to install this is on the outlet side of the coolant hose. These factory cable ties actually just can push the D-dent and they come right off. Just kind of handy. So we got most of the cable ties out of the way here. So I'm just going to pull this harness out and over out of the way. So we're just going to do kind of a test fit here, make sure it's not going to rub on anything. Fan being so close, it should work about where it's saying. So I think it's going to be easier to do the cut more accurately by making sure I pull the hose right out. So I'm just going to remove these two pipe clamps. They're 6mm heads. Just loosen a second of the pipe clamps here. I got my drain catch pan down below. See how much of a mess we can make. So the instruction says to take 2 inches or 50mm off of the hose. So we got our first cut at, so the bottom piece will be about 2 inches. So basically what that's going to allow is for the radiator connection and then the connection of the inline heater to have enough space to be in the bottom part. And then it said to take out 1 inch of the pipe to fit the heater. So we'll slice out 1 inch. There we go. So if that's correct, basically, as you can see, it fits the same width as the body. So that's why the 1 inch. So now, it's going to assemble the top and the bottom. Try to get it the same orientation as best we can. These pipe clamps are a standard American. They are a 5/16 socket. Okay, so this top clamp I'm not going to tighten all the way down just yet because I want to be able to get the orientation of this pipe just right. Once I got it kind of set, then I'll cinch it up. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. I got the original pipe clamp at the bottom, the one on the top, just so I don't have to undo anything once we get it back on here. There, bottom's on. Top's on. There's the top one. For the bottom one. Okay, so the issue now though, of course, is that there's a big gap of air in the system. What you have to do, find the bleed screw, and on this particular skidoo, it is right up here. We will open that up, take off this clasp and away she goes. On some skidoos it's actually back in the tunnel. This particular one is right there. It's the highest point in the coolant system. So what you do is basically open that up, you add fluid and just keep running it until no more air is escaping from the bleed. So kind of like I did in the oil change video, I measured out how much, in this case, coolant came out of the system. It was 2 beer cans, so basically about almost 700 milliliters, I guess. So I'm going to safely fill this reservoir completely up. Should probably take the full tank, and then we can get to the coolant level line here. So interestingly enough, when I phoned the Yamaha dealer to ask about the proper coolant mix, they just said use a pre-mix, so ready to use. Even though this, Prestone stuff is yellowish green, and what came out of this machine is the Yamaha Lube or Yamaha Cool, whatever the heck brand it's called, is blue. But I guess they said it's good to go, so I mean, if I wreck the sled, it's on them. So now it's time to open this bleed screw before we get any further along. So first thing is to remove this pipe clamp here. If your vice grips would work, this bleed opened up. So you can hear the fluid run now that it's open system. You can hear it drop. And yeah, it took the whole container there. So I'm just going to add coolant till we hit the mark. There, you can see a little bit spurt out there. Let's add a little bit more coolant and we'll see if it. Yeah, it's starting to come out. So it should be then that we are bled. Lead clamp back on, fill up the reservoir, fire up the sled, and see what happens. So one other thing here, of course, is to put the block heater on. It's actually block heater cord, sorry. It's actually sealed onto the unit so that you don't get corrosion on the contacts. So I've kind of given it a bit of a loop here, and then I'm going to strap it along this wiring harness across on the frame here. And it's going to go out in front of the radiator, as there's a space there with the obviously for the sort of cowl intake for the air. And one thing I did is I reused one of the factory straps up here and left it a little bit loose on the frame so that I can push it in so that the cord isn't dangling down around the skis, and pull it out for extra length as needed. So I'm going to just loosely put a couple extra cable ties on here. And of course, for the $60 price, you don't get the extra 2 or 3 cable ties. Of course, that'd be maybe the luxury model. I'm not sure. Can't stand it when companies cut corners like that. Anyway, thank goodness there's Princess Auto. I'll put one here. Remember, I'm going to leave it loose so that it can move a little bit as needed. One there. Snip off this extra here. There. Well, it's all back together now, and we got the coolant to the right level. So now what we're going to do is just run the engine for a little while and watch the coolant temperature gauge until the fan cuts in. Once the fan cuts in, it means that the thermostat is popped and it's at an operating temperature. So if it overheats, then we know we don't have enough coolant in it. Well, it's been running for probably about 5 to 7 minutes. The fan didn't cut in, but just means it's idling and didn't get hot enough. I can feel that the radiator is warm and everything else, so I'm convinced we're good to go. So one other tip I wanted to show you is to get yourself a battery blanket. This is a 110 volt plug-in. You can get it for all sorts of automotive batteries. I would get the biggest one you can. So these batteries can fail you as well. It can be a choke point. So quick story, one time was about minus 27 overnight with a wind chill. I had the sled loaded up, all my fishing gear, trying to get it on the road by about 4:30 in the morning. Went outside to start the sled.
So it can warm up on the way to the lake?
And it wouldn't start.
So I pulled, after some fumbling, pulled the battery out of the sled, put it in the house for 10-15 minutes, and the sled started right up. So these definitely can be a choke point as well. So the reason I said get a bigger blanket is so that you can use the excess to wrap around the oil reservoir, and then through immersion it can draw a little bit of heat into the engine as well. So that plus the inline coolant heater, and you should be good to go as long as you can plug in the sled. So if you don't, I do have another video I'm going to upload with a tip I learned in Arctic Army training, how to get a dead sled going with just, you know, the gear you may have on an ice fishing expedition, for example. Well, I hope that was handy and gets you out on the trail. I think it's a pretty easy install, and I think anyone could pretty well do it, so tackle it. Of course, remember, I'm not a mechanic, so those are just my ideas how to do this, so take that for what it's worth. I'm going to test this out this weekend in northern Saskatchewan, going lake trout fishing with my family, and it's supposed to dip down to about -22 with wind chill down to about -30, so we'll see if it works. Well, good morning. Here's the test. It got pretty cold last night in northern Saskatchewan, so it's about -23, -24. So as long as the cord works on my snowmobile, I see a light up to it, should be able to start really easy. So see how hot this is here? It's going to reach in and touch the... Oh, can't even touch it, it's so hot. Definitely doing his thing. We'll just cycle the key a couple times so it primes the fuel system. Can hear the fuel pump working there. Find if you do it 2 or 3 times. Not quite the push-pull system on the 72 Elan, but she works. Okay, here we go.